The door on my shop is trash. The brick mold is pulling off, the trim is in bad shape, the jam's coming apart, you can see daylight, and anytime that it rains, water pools up and leaks underneath the door. So today I'm going to show you how I go about replacing an exterior door with the help of my friends from GE. Naturally, the first thing to do is to remove the old door. Now, could I fix this door instead of replacing it? Potentially. However, doing it would require removing the jamb and all that anyway, and since I'm going to be doing that, I would prefer not to have a door with glass right next to the door handle that could easily be shattered and somebody could get access to thousands of dollars of tools. I'm going to save the door slab itself because there's not really much wrong with it. It could be fixed, but somebody put about 1,000 screws in the jamb and it's cracked in spots and it's not worth trying to save. So I'll get rid of that. And so what we're left with is a clean, rough opening. Now I can tell you what the problem is with the water almost right away, because whoever installed this door didn't apply any sealant to the bottom underneath the threshold. And that's a surefire way to let water get under your door. So we're going to fix that with some Supreme Silicone from GE. But before we do that, I am going to use some flashing tape and flash the tops and the sides of the rough opening. So I'm peeling back the siding a little bit and taping the sides of the rough opening and then tucking it up underneath the siding. That should give us a nice waterproof install. And then from there, I'm just verifying the measurements of the rough opening to make sure that everything looks good and checking everything for level and plumb, including the concrete area under the threshold. And then I can dry fit the new door. Now, I'm installing a door with pre-installed brick mold, which is this trim piece around the front here. And so as I'm checking to make sure that the door fits, I use a pencil to mark the threshold so I know where I can apply my sealant. And then I'm just making sure that everything can get nice and plumb and level. However, when I was doing this, I noticed that the siding was actually hanging a little bit too low on the top of the door, which was making the door kind of lean outward. And so I used my skill saw to cut back the siding a little bit and then fix the flashing tape so that I could have the door installed directly to the flashing tape and the substrate underneath. And with that done, we're ready to apply our sealant. We're going to be using GE Supreme Silicone for this project. Silicone is ideal for your window and door applications because it doesn't freeze or crack, and it can expand and contract with the change of seasons, and it's also 100% waterproof. Because I'm installing a pre-hung door with a pre-installed brick mold on it, I'm putting a nice thick bead of silicone all around the rough opening, so when the door is in place, it will seal up against this and create a waterproof barrier. And then at the bottom of the door, underneath where the threshold is going to be, I'm applying the same Supreme Silicone, just in black. I just prefer to use black when it comes to things like this, and making sure that I have ample sealant applied so that there's no chance of water getting underneath the door. Before the final install of the door, you want to make sure that you remove any plugs or caps or anything that's in place from the factory to keep the door together and shut for shipping. And then I'm ready to carefully set the door back in the rough opening. Now, this is an easier job with two people, but in the event that you're doing it by yourself, I like to have a brad nailer on hand just so I can put a couple brads in once I get it installed and make sure that the exterior is plumb and level. I just toss a couple brads in the brick mold so then I can know that the door is not going to fall out as I go around to the inside. Brads are pretty thin, so they'll bend if I need to make any adjustments, and they won't interfere too much as I try to shim and get everything in place to make sure that the door opens and closes properly. Shim placement is important when installing your doors. I place a shim at the top hinge and towards the bottom of the door, and then I use a screw through the top hinge to hold it in place. My next shim goes at the bottom of the door on the hinge side. Now we'll push out the door from pinching at the bottom, and then directly behind the middle hinge. Then we'll check to see how the door closes, and then shim off the opposite side so that the door reveal is consistent from top to bottom. When putting the screws in on the non-hinge side, I like to pull back the weather stripping and put the screw behind it so that way you can't see it. I know I'm going to get some gruff from some pros because I didn't use a jamb extension on this door. It's for a workshop, and I'll just trim it out on the inside to be good enough. And it's not something that I'm going to get into in this video. So now that the door is installed, we can work on our trim, and I'm basically going to be replicating the trim I've done on the windows using the LP Smart Side trim, nailing it off with some galvanized nails, and framing out the door. It's a little bit smaller than the old one, but I'm going to be painting the whole shop at some point anyway, so it's not a big deal. Then next we can make our trim watertight by adding some GE Paintable Silicone Supreme all around where the trim meets the siding. And then once everything sets up, the last step is just painting everything. This is part of a much larger project in which I plan to tear out and re-pour this concrete and build a gable entry over this doorway. But for now, I'm happy with the way that it turned out, and I want to say a quick thank you to GE for making this video possible, and encourage you guys to grab some GE Sealants products for your home repair projects on my Amazon storefront at the link down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you next time.